Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Inside Movies Galore. I'm your host, David Stregi, and here in the room with me, I have a local film. Well, he was local, but now he lives in California.
That's right. Yeah.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how
Well,
you got
okay.
involved
We
in
we
filmmaking?
we can start with my name. I'm TC DeWitt, and I do still consider myself local to Wisconsin. That's where I
Okay,
was born and raised, and that's where I consider home. Even though I currently live out in Los Angeles, I will always be a Wisconsin boy.
gotcha. So, how did you get involved in filmmaking? And I'm going to probably ask you about one of the first films that you did here called The Seven Year Wish, or is that where that your first short film? Or
Well, first, thank you for having me on for this. I've
yep,
been following your show only for a little, like a couple weeks now, but it's fun. I like this. So 7 Year Wish was near the beginning of what I like to consider my filmmaking career. I have always loved telling stories and goofing off with my friends with our video cameras, growing up through middle school and high school, and I'm a class of 2000 guy, and I really feel like we missed the YouTube boom by like 5 years, like because the stuff we were making, just being dummies as kids, would totally be the kind of stuff that goes viral now. Ah, whatever.
I
But
hear you
in
in that.
yeah, or well, anyhow, 2010, Chad Halverson and a couple of friends had done the 48 hour. I had been went to elementary school together. We had a band in college together, and he and a couple friends reached out to me in 2010 and said, "Hey, we're doing this thing called the 48-hour film festival. Last year we didn't have a writer. It was a disaster. Would you like to come and be the writer with another guy for this?"
Okay,
And I have my bachelor's degree in writing. I've been writing and telling stories for years, but that was my first experience sitting down, writing a screenplay, tick on a ticking clock, and and finishing a movie. That movie was Dangerous Summers,
okay.
and that opened the floodgates. Up to that point, I had thought, "Oh, I want to make movies. I want to write movies," and I had some misconceptions about it. I had learned a lot of lessons moving out to Los Angeles. Luckily, I didn't come out here with the attitude of I'm going to be the next big thing. I came out very eager to learn, and I was able to apply all that to 7 Year Wish, or sorry, to Dangerous Summers. That got the ball rolling, and next year we did 7 Year Wish, and that's still one of my favorites that we've ever done.
Now, were you involved in any of the direction of Dangerous Summers while you were writing it, or did you have any more involvement than just the writing?
Funnily enough, yes, I was only brought on as the writer. I came in knowing I wasn't going to step on any of these people's toes. They'd been doing this for a couple years. That production company was Firmament Films. They were just starting out, but uh, Chris Mayer and Jessica Swenson and Jen Robers, they had been doing the 48s for a couple of years and had been friends. So I came in and I knew I didn't want to step on anybody's toes. So I was like, I'm just the writer. I'm just the writer. I'm not going to be presumptuous about anything.
Okay,
But I was eager. And at one point in the editing, so this is early Sunday morning,
okay,
there was the our editor Chad Halverson felt we missed something. There's the story isn't working. There's something not working. And on the spot, I conceptualized what is the opening to Dangerous Summers, where it's the voiceover and you see the shadowy figure reaching for the camera.
okay.
And Jen at that point was so exhausted. She's like, "Can you please just can you go direct that scene?" So that gracious that she was, let me conceptualize it, film it, shoot it, and so that was very, very, very light involvement in the direction, but it did cap the movie off rather nicely.
Okay, cool. And then ultimately, um, were you involved any more than that in that film? And um, now you, with 7 Year Wish,
Hmm.
did you slightly direct that with someone else?
Yeah, Jennifer Roberts is the title director on there. I did once again. It was just a matter of a necessity. The 48s are so fast and furious that sometimes you have to wear multiple hats in order to achieve that success of finishing on time. And because of Dangerous Summers, we had done another short film in between Dangerous Summers
Okay.
and the next 48, which was 7 Year Wish, and I had developed a rapport with all this filmmaking team. So when it came time for 7 Year Wish, I had some more experience. I had some more input that was worth hearing, and I did help direct a couple of moments throughout that. Jennifer's still the lead director on that. I would never take that from her,
Okay.
but she did once again. She trusted me to play around. One moment in particular that I'm proud of my involvement in was in 7 Year Wish. There's a moment where Luke Kramer plays Matt, opens the door to his girlfriend and shuts it behind him, and I whip the door open and stick my head out as Death, and I say, "Debbie, blah." We had
That's right.
done,
You
we had
also
done.
you also acted in the 7 Year.
Yes, that's right. I played Death, and we had done that take after take after take, and it wasn't clicking. So on the other side of the door before we went out, I said, "All right, Luke, I'm just going to give you some light direction here. I want you to get out that door. I want you to shut it as fast as possible. Don't worry about me. I won't get hurt. You just get out, shut that door. You do not want me out there." So the timing in that of him outdoor slam, me whipping the door out, sticking my head out, Debbie Bluck was that turned out so great. It cracked us all up once we had nailed it.
Now, were you involved in any of the casting involved in this film?
Uh, with the 48s, with the way the process works, our producer at the time had created a hierarchy of who gets to make decisions and whatnot. And because I had been developing um, this very small library at the time of films, as the writer with Chris Scholes on 7 Year Wish, as we were writing, we were like, okay, this person, Luke could totally be Matt, and who should be D, who should be Death. And I never go into the 48s or anything that I write thinking I'm playing this character. And it was suggested that no one else could be D. No, and I'm like, are you sure? Because it could be this person, this person. And the producer was like, no, it's got to be you. Jen was like, no, it's got to be you, which is super flattering and boosts my ego nicely. Um, so it a little bit of input in terms of casting, at least in those early films we were doing.
Okay, sounds cool. Now, ultimately, you were where was the shot? Was this shot on location in Milwaukee?
Sun Prairie, actually, just outside Madison. That entire film, Dangerous Summers, pretty much the majority of the next few 48s were all done exclusively in Sun Prairie,
Okay.
which was our base camp.
Okay. Cool. Now, is there anything else that you'd like to tell us about the 7 Year Wish before we go on to your next film, Cold Charlie?
I could go on and on about any of these, so we should move on. 7 Year Wish, I will say, is still one of my favorites. There's
Awesome.
so many little details.
Alrighty. Then, how did you get involved with the film Cold Charlie?
So Cold Charlie was a stage production that I had written, a 10-minute stage show, a two-man show. And after we had done Dangerous Summers, everyone was like, "Hey, this team works. We should make more stuff. Who's got some ideas? Who's got? Does anyone?" And I presented the script like, "Well, I have this stage play that I always thought would make a good film." And our producer Chris Mayer at the time was like, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's do this one." And that was a lot of fun because Jessica Swenson, who has proven herself to be this incredible production designer, art director, built and did the whole set. That whole set was her garage, and she did all that herself. Like, I mean, certainly she had some help from some minions, but that was her amazing talent showing very early. She's still to this day, even though art direction and production design isn't her career by any means, she considers it a hobby. She's just as good as so many other production designers that I work with professionally out here in LA.
Okay. And ultimately, where did you show Charlie at? Did it have any kind of a reception?
That one was a little tougher for us because it was a new experience. I look at it now and all I can see is like, we should have done that differently. We should have done that differently. But it did get into, actually, I try testing my knowledge here of all the films we've done, what has made it into film festivals or whatnot. That one didn't have like a great reception because I feel it's a lesser of our films because we were still learning. I still see the good in it, and it's one of those movies that every now and then I'm like, that'd be one worth remaking, but I don't want to George Lucas it and go back to things.
Totally understand.
Yeah.
Ultimately, was there any thing that you could remember while you were on set that you would stand out to you that you would remember?
We had a sound issue at one point where we lost a chunk of. We realized all the sound wasn't rolling on a clip, and that was a little frustrating. But it was a great experience too. It wasn't a 48. We weren't on a time crunch. It was essentially our first experience in shooting an indie production without limitations, other than the ones that we just talent and ability. So I have fond memories of that, especially getting to work with Luke again and Jesse Static as the two soldiers, giving Jesse more to do than he had in Dangerous Summers and 7 Year Wish. Both those guys are immensely talented actors.
Cool. Going on to another short film called Something Bigger. What made you come up with that concept?
So Something Bigger, at the time I was performing in a stage show in Burlington, Wisconsin, and Ryan Brooks, who very talented cinematographer, he just wanted to go out and film something. He's like, these sunsets have been great recently. We got these great locations here in Burlington. Let's just run out. Let's make something up on the fly. And that's where Something Bigger came from. The whole idea fit on half a sheet of paper. The voiceover came just through general conversation with Ryan. We initially, this is funny because this might affect the viewing of it in future viewings. Initially, it was going to be all this super serious, gritty cinematography and voiceover leading up to a really dumb punchline. I'm not even going to tell you what the punchline was, but something was going to be in that bag in the end where it's like, but we decided to cut the silliness of that and play it straight and just have it be this very brooding, experimental cinematography challenge for Ryan himself.
Okay, cool. And now, did you do that? Did you film that one in Sun Prairie as well?
No, that one was in Burlington, Wisconsin, right near the Malthouse Theater, a fantastic 80-plus-year-old stage theater right there in Burlington.
Cool. And so far, have you had any problems finding? I mean, did you have any problems finding cast for your films? I mean, within these beginning short films.
In the first early stages there, it was this fun, exciting new hobby that a lot of the people involved who had done the 48s on those before me had joined for Dangerous Summers and 7 Year Wish. It was this fun thing we could get together annually to do. And then stemming off of that to do other short films became something like, oh yeah, I like doing this. What we faced as the years go on, and I mean, you don't seriously have to go through my entire library. There's a lot of films here. But what happened over time that made it less easy was how much more seriously we started taking the filmmaking process. A lot of us in the early years, it was something fun, and slowly, many of us went out. It became our careers. We weren't. It wasn't just something we got together to do on a whim. We took every one of these seriously as productions, knowing that it was building up the careers we were all chasing. So in the early years, though, it was easy to get people to just say, yeah, let's do it. It was later down the road where suddenly it was like, no, this is a little more intense than I wanted it to be.
Well, the reason why I wanted to interview you is, first of all, not a whole lot of people get a lot of attention on how how much goes on behind the scenes when you're making these short films, and I know that a lot of short films don't get a lot of attention, and the reason why I'm asking you about each one of your films is because you never know, you might come up with something that a previous filmmaker had not actually gone through or whatnot. So that's why I'm asking you about each of your
Oh, certainly. Keeping that in mind, I will keep that in mind for subsequent questions as we discuss here, because something that we have all learned over these years of doing these films are tricks of the trade, little tricks we keep in our tool belts that we use still and it all comes from doing these independent productions and just trying new things. And so to answer your question again about, was it hard to get a cast and crew? No, it wasn't tough to get cast and crew, but it was a little difficult to find people with experience and know-how. Enthusiasm is a beautiful thing, and finding people who are enthusiastic about making stuff is so important, especially in independent productions. But having actual skills and experience to add to that enthusiasm, that can only help.
Totally understand. So ultimately, after Something Bigger, you went on to do a short film called Relish.
Yes.
With that film.
All right. So Relish is, I guess it's not fair. I like all. Oh, this one's my favorite. This one's my favorite. So Relish was. This was a much different experience because Relish was filmed out in California.
Okay.
I had been working at a movie theater with a friend who was going to film school, and he wanted to film a short film. He wanted to do something. I want to do something like Tarantino or Robert Rodriguez. I want to do something like gritty. And he, in the conversations he had with me, I pitched the idea of Relish to him. Something you'll find if you really take a step back and look at the whole of pretty much all the films I've made is, and you had mentioned it in a couple of your reviews, I tend to lean more towards humorous. I don't see comedy as a crutch. I see it as an outlet.
It definitely is an outlet, and I think when a lot of films tend to center around some very depressing moments, sometimes humor is a nice touch to certain things. So.
Yes, absolutely, and I like to use humor in. There's a lot of dark comedy in what we do. If you look at 7-Year Wish, it's about death, killing people accidentally or not, and torturing a guy to be his best friend, and it's all humorous death. I believe on my IMDb, one of my director trademarks is humorous death or humorous outlook at death, as well as my baseball cap that has my name on it. So Relish being this guy being face getting bashed in, getting punched around, telling jokes through this whole thing. That one was a lot of fun. Stephen Abraham, who is the director on that was my making my first of a couple films that I did with him. The cinematographer Xerxes Sanko, who is a phenomenal director of photography, just an insane cinematographer who does not do enough. Like, he does a lot of like wedding videos. I would love to see him do more narrative stuff. And and we filmed that in a night, and that was another example of, hey, you guys want to do this? This will be a lot of fun. Okay, let's problem solve. How are we gonna do the blood? Oh, let's get some corn syrup and some red food dye, just like the old school method. Just slather that on my face, and okay, let's get these work lights in here. Okay, that's making you sweat. And like Mike, who plays the guy beating me up, he was just the biggest guy Steve could find to stick in it. And Mike's a great example of enthusiasm.
Mm-hmm.
Now you had critiqued his acting ability, which is fair, and I'm sure he would be the first to tell you he's not the greatest actor, but he was so enthusiastic about wanting to do it and wanting to be there. And Mike is someone that I've only worked with a handful of times, but it's always a pleasure to have him there because he wants to be there and he wants to just tell me what to do. I'll do it.
Well, I definitely saw the enthusiasm.
Yeah.
So it's not that I was trying to overly critique him to an extent where, oh my God, he's got to hide underneath a room somewhere or whatnot. But
of course not. Of course not.
When you see so many independent films, it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. It's instances like that, and Relish actually has gotten to be in a couple of film festivals since, some nice indie. A Grindhouse Festival in Las Vegas. There was an independent kind of Tarantino-inspired film festival that was in Los Angeles that we got to be in, and so it's gotten some legs. And in the grand scheme of things, probably not the strongest of movies, acting and narrative and visually, but it's one of those. Just do it. Like if I could give any advice to someone who's thinking, oh, I'd love to be a filmmaker, but I don't know. Just do it. It's going to be bad. It's going to be rough around the edges. But the only way you're going to get any better is if you just keep making stuff and learn from it.
Oh yeah. Ultimately, you got into a project called Significant, and how did you get involved with this?
This was another great example of Ryan Brooks being like, let's do something besides these 48s. Let's do something. And I pitched Significant as part one of a 5-part miniseries. So this was our first attempt at a series of films. We weren't just going to do one and done. I wrote down 5 episodes. We had a full arc, and okay, let's try the first one and see where we can go from there. And this was a great experience in terms of challenging us with visual effects. Once again, Significant doesn't really have any humor in it at all. That's a much more straightforward, time travel-y sci-fi thriller, to the best of our ability at the time. And ultimately, we weren't able to shoot the rest of it. We actually shot the second episode, and when we got into post-production, the sound was awful.
Ooh.
And bad sound is going to kill a film in an instant. So it was this very sad, it was very disappointing, and pretty much crushed our attempts to it was one of those things where it's like, you know what, maybe we just come back to this in the future, no pun intended, come back to this and try again sometime. I still have the 5 scripts. I look at them now and I think, oh boy, these are rough. But I've learned a lot as a writer since, and yeah, there's always the potential of going back to Significant and playing in that time cop universe.
Cool. Ultimately, after that, you went on to work with Stephen Abraham again on Thursdays I Do Laundry. How did you get involved with that project?
Thursday's Laundry was at this point I'd been making short films for a few years. I was really loving the workhorse, workman, journeyman attitude of the 48s, where it's like, we can do this in a day. We can get a script. We can shoot this all out. We can edit it. There's no reason to prolong.
I understand 48-hour film festival. That's kind of a challenge, and for filmmakers, it's it's kind of it's done within a certain time.
Yes.
And it's like you almost look forward to whether you can finish it or not at the end of the day,
Anyone out there who wants to see where they are, wants to gauge their level of ability in terms of a film production should do a 48, because a 48 is the entirety of a film production from conception to completion. You have to come up with the idea, you have to write it, you have to film it, you have to edit it, you have to finish it. Boom, boom, boom. Everything has to be done within 48 hours. And once you can do that, other productions, you know where your limitation, you know where your weaknesses are.
Mhm.
And bringing that attitude into Thursday's Laundry, much like Relish, we were just hanging out, and he's like, man, I really want to film something again. I really want to film something again. And I said, okay, what do you have any ideas? And he's like, oh, I don't know. I was thinking it'd be cool to see like a hitman's day-to-day life. And then the ideas just came rolling out like, oh, okay, this and this. And then he does laundry once a week. Oh, and he sees a girl. And so we conceptualized the whole idea just hanging out. And he's like, yeah, that would be fun to make. And I said, what are you talking about? We're making this. I got the camera, you get the crew. Let's cast this. I know the actor who can do it. My buddy Todd Tatro, who is a wonderful actor. He's appeared in several independent films, feature films. He's been on some TV. I still work with. I'm working with him next week on a project. Happily working with him and his brother.
Cool.
And Thursday's Laundry was a great example of. So I had said earlier, as this film career developed, it became a little harder to find people to be involved, and that's not for lack of desire, but it's we did Thursday's Laundry. It was originally just going to be the assistant director. I'd written it. I was going to be assistant director so I could keep the schedule going.
Mm-hmm.
That was a 11-hour day, and by about halfway through the day, Steve was like, I'm out. Oh boy, this is just, I was not expecting this to be like this. You're working me to death.
Mm-hmm.
And which, that's fine. He had not had that experience yet. And um, um, it was that sort of like, oh, okay, I can push harder. I can push myself harder. I can push some of my crew harder than some of my other crew who don't want to do this for a living. They
Mm-hmm.
just want to do this for fun. And that was a great lesson learned from a production like On Thursdays I Do Laundry. Is that okay? Know your level of I don't want to say dedication, because Steve was dedicated to seeing it done, but it's that, are you willing to not sleep? It's more than a 48 where there's no sleeping. Now it's like we're not on a time limit. Can't we just take 3 days to do this? No, we're gonna do this in this time because I know we can do it. So the whip cracking began, and that was a great experience in terms of seeing how a movie can get done.
Understood. Understandable. Ultimately, now you started working with um, Chad Halverson, who was also from Wisconsin,
Mm-hmm.
from Permanent Films. Now he was on in Dangerous Summers just a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
and in Significant, again, you started working with him a little bit more as time went on too, from what I understand. I was working with Chad.
Well, he's the one who opened the door for this all the way back with Dangerous Summers. He's the one who had called me up and said, hey, we need a writer. And I still worked with Chad to this day. We have gone the distance together. We've taken short films to 50 plus film festivals, and he produced a short film later in the library, Screenwriter, that went all the way to the Cannes Film Festival in France. He
Nice.
went to film school in Milwaukee. He still lives in Milwaukee and works freelance, editing and drone work and producing. And growing with him as a filmmaker has been a wonderful experience. I had mentioned earlier, we went to elementary school together. We worked at the same movie theater together and played in high school and early college. We had a band together in college. I've he's one of my best friends, and that friendship has only developed more and closely and over the years that we've been making all these films together. He's
Cool.
Yeah. And if anything, he challenges me a lot, and I push him too much.
Understandable. In ultimately, you went on to work on a project called "It Was Wonderful." How did you get involved with that one?
Oh, and it's great that you mentioned Chad before we got into this, because it's he's very much involved in this. So he worked for a company in Milwaukee, a marketing and film production company called Flip 11, and they were involved with producing the Flying Car Festival in Milwaukee, which
Okay.
I believe is an annual festival. At least it was at the time, and it's this innovation and technology festival.
Okay.
And he had pitched the idea of adding a film festival element to it,
Okay.
that people would submit 60-second films that would play on a loop that had something to do with man's relationship to technology.
Okay.
So his company put it out there that they're going to do a film festival, and Chad said, hey, submit something. Because the way it works is you submit a script. If it's approved, I believe we got some production money having been selected. And
Okay.
so I submitted It Was Wonderful as a 60-second film. So the nice thing about It Was Wonderful is you can watch it on a loop. There's not so, though it's presented on YouTube as a beginning and end, really it's meant to be seen as a cycle, that you don't know where the beginning is and where the ending is, because that's how it was presented
Okay.
at Flying Car.
Well, and it's nice to know that there was a festival at this point in time of that nature that could uh, give that kind of an avenue for, that kind of film. So,
Yeah, it's Milwaukee is great for that. Milwaukee is such a budding independent film city, and it's unfortunate because there were film subsidies a few years back for 1 year, and then the people up on Capitol Hill decided to crush those, and so now that all the productions that were going to Chicago were coming to Milwaukee, and now all those Hollywood productions there's no advantage to filming in Wisconsin, which is unfortunate. But that just challenges the independent scene all the more.
Oh yeah. And then after It Was Wonderful, you went on to do a production called The Noise, which you co-directed that with someone.
Yes, The Noise, which I wrote and co-directed with Chris Scholes, is my favorite. I friggin' love The Noise. I think that's one of those, everybody came to work hard and play, and everyone was at the top of their game across the board for that. So up to this point with the Madison 48s that we had done, we had won some awards, which is always nice. And the year previous to that, we had done Filling In, which was a great production as well. But The Noise, we just blew the doors off the city. It was such a wonderful experience. And awards aside, which we ended up sweeping the awards, the film itself is so tight, and all the chemistry works so perfectly, and it clips along at such a great pace. I feel it's just one of our tightest, most professional looking pieces.
You mentioned Filling In. Was that a writing? Was that one that you'd written on?
Yes, yeah. Filling In was just another 48 that the film group that we've essentially been discussing through these films. They had done that 48 in 2012 while I was producing a stage musical in Burlington.
Okay.
So the fun on this one, and this is a matter of really, really wanting to always be involved whenever my friends are doing something. On Friday night, which is when the 48 starts, and then Sunday night's when it ends. On Friday night, we had a show in Burlington. I was directing it. During intermission, the draw happened for the 48, like the required elements. So during intermission, I wrote what would be the premise of Filling In and emailed it to the guys. Then once the show ended, me and Candace Osler, who is my partner and was in the show at the time, as soon as the show ended, we got in the car, drove to Madison. While I'm in the car, I wrote the script for Filling In. We walked in the door in Sun Prairie. I said, all right, here's the script. Made a couple tweaks and started filming. And then by Saturday afternoon, I had to get back in the car, go back to Burlington, and get back up on the stage to do another show.
totally understand about
So
that.
another thing that made the noise so much fun was that I didn't have to drive back and forth from Burlington. I was there the whole weekend.
Now, ultimately, you acted in this one as well.
Yes.
And I've noticed that you tend to act in some of your short films. Um,
Yes.
how does that impact your having to direct it as well?
That's a great question because the directing acting is not an easy couple of balls to juggle, right? Luckily, getting to co-write and co-direct with, I was co-directing with Chris Scholes at the time. It's nice to have that second set of eyes. With the 48s, being involved from the conception of the story, the writing of the script, and only, I was only planning to direct with it.
Okay.
This is where having like a really smart producer comes into play because with 48s, with just productions in general, having a producer who can make the tough decisions and the tough calls with the full scope of the production in mind, that's essential for success. And I wrote the noise, I wrote Oliver as the character, thinking one of the actors we had asked to come would play the part. And our producer Chris at the time said, "Oh no, you have to do it. It goes back to 7 Year Wish with D. He knew the ability of the actors that we had. He trusted that if anyone was going to pull it off, it was good. It was going to be me. Very flattering, and I'm very happy to have done it because it was such a fun role to play. So when it came to acting and directing, I was able to trust my cinematographer, John Klein. I was able to trust Schulze to keep an eye on things as well, to anything that I was missing in terms of direction that he was able to swoop in there and solve as well. The only thing I wasn't allowed to do was the one stunt, getting hit by the car. I was like, I'm all for it. I want to do my own stunts. I want to be that guy. And John Klein, our cinematographer, was like, we are halfway through production. If you actually get hurt, I don't want to lose the director. So you're not doing this stunt. I'm like, oh, come on, guys. So Will Ball, who has stunt experience, put on my costume and he rolled over that car.
Cool. And then after the noise, he went on to do a short production called Plans Change. How did you get involved with that?
Plans Change came from another 60-second film festival that was going out of Chicago.
Okay.
I think it was Ryan Brooks, our cinematographer at the time, who said, "Oh, we got to enter this 60-second film festival. We can just treat it like a 48, film it all out in a day." And actually, this is a fun little behind the scenes. We filmed that in Milwaukee. We produced it out of Chad Halverson's apartment at the time, him and his wife, Kate, living in Milwaukee. And I didn't know this, but Ryan, who was a producer on that, gave the impression to Chad that this was a 24-hour film festival, that it needed to be done that night. So Chad, while we filmed what we filmed with Luke as the actor on screen, Chad was in the editing bay, like furiously putting it together like a 48. And it was somewhere midday. I think I'm the one who was like, "Oh wow, you're really treating this like you have to get it done." And Chad's like, "What are you talking about? I have to get it done." Oh no. And then Ryan's like, "Why'd you tell him? We would have had a finished product at the end of the day." And then Chad just was like, "I'm done. I am not going to sit here busting my butt trying to finish this if there's no reason for me to be." He was not happy. That was great. The little Easter egg on there is the winning lotto numbers spell out firmament.
Nice. Now, eventually, I'll ask this question, but when did you eventually put together your Redacted Mania company?
So Firmament evolved into Redacted only a couple of years ago. It was a matter of rebranding, and I've spoken a couple times now about that what's that level of even interest in being a filmmaker? Is it a hobby or is this your career? And Redacted was essentially that moment of who we want to make a living doing this. We want to be a production company. We want to get paid work. We are all Chad and myself and Corey Caseman, Candace Osler. We were all looking at this as this isn't something we don't just do this for fun. This is our livelihood. And Firmament was this great hobby and wonderful get together with friends and film production company. And it was Redacted that was the next essentially era of no, we're going to try to take this as legitimately as possible. We're going to try to push ourselves to that next level.
Okay. And ultimately, after plans change, you were part of a project called Game Day. How did you get involved with that?
So Game Day is another 48-hour film, and this, if looking at all the 48s we've done, Game Day is one of those pinnacle moments, because for anyone who's done a 48, musical is the worst one you can get. You do not want to get stuck with musical, because if you don't have the musical talent, if you don't have the musical capabilities to do a musical, it's going to be rough.
Mm-hmm.
We just so happen to have this amazing composer in Jameson Static and an amazing sound mixer and designer, Corey Caseman. And when it came leading up to Game Day, that was our biggest team. That was the last year I feel like all those people who really liked to do it every summer wanted to be involved. Because that team, I think we had 30, 40 people on that team. Funnily enough, I was talking with someone yesterday who's going to do a 48 out in Los Angeles, and I mentioned Game Day as having a 30, 40 person team. He's like, oh, only in LA could you do something like that? And I said, well, actually, we did that in Madison. We did that in Wisconsin. And he couldn't believe that we somehow found a crew of 40 people willing to do a 48 in Madison of all places. But that's where that love and desire to do these things comes from. And that's thankfully we had that many people to attempt to do musical, because that one was difficult to do.
Totally understand, but at least you were able to find 40 people for it.
Yes. Oh yeah. And it was such a writing challenge, because I wanted to do a more complex story. I'm always interested in layers. If you look at 7-Year Wish, if you look at The Noise, I love layering in as much stuff into these short films. But with a musical, we had to keep it simple. And it kind of broke my heart at the time. I'm like, oh, I have these great ideas for some big things. And Schulze's like, we need like a really simple story if we're going to pull this off. And he was 100% right about that.
So ultimately, have you now that we've talked about some of these short films, was there anyone that you worked with in
Oh, I lost you there.
Working with you?
Sorry, that cut out there for a split second with our. I'm across the room from you, and I had some wax in my ears for a second. So you mind repeating the question?
Oh, yeah. Ultimately, did you work with anyone new, casting wise, on either Game Day or Plans Change or vice versa? Was there anyone that you worked with each time new? I mean,
Okay.
I know that you tend to work with people that you've worked with before, but was there anyone that you've worked with that you could say in these short films that we've talked about that you could talk about?
Yeah. Well, one of the nice things about our film team, of all of us growing as filmmakers as we went along, is that we constantly were getting new people who wanted to join the fray, and pretty much every film we did, someone new would jump on board. Yeah, we have a library of actors, our stable of actors that we're comfortable with and we like to work with. Candace, Luke, Jesse, obviously myself, I've been on screen a lot. Chad and Jessica Swenson, all of us were the regular stables of actors that we would draw from. But behind the scenes, behind the camera, there was production people that were new. So for like game day, Jesse, who had been acting for us, him and Kyle, his buddy, actually came in to help with the writing team, and that was a new two new elements in the mix in terms of the 48s in our production team.
Okay.
It's always great to not just bring new people in, but take some of those regulars that we've worked with and challenge them to new things. So like Colin Wilcoxon, who had been our great AD up to a point, he directed filling in with Chris Scholes and did a fantastic job. They won Best Picture with that. So
Awesome.
it's fun to bring new people in because you get that new level of enthusiasm, and you get to test your chops as a teacher and a mentor, as well as someone who executes short films.
Cool. Moving on to the production of The Unpossessors. How did you get involved with that?
Wow, we're like magically creating segues here. So Unpossessors came from a year of actually making that decision we're going to challenge all of our regulars to new positions that they've been interested in. So Doug Vajko, who had done behind the scenes for us, he'd done some camera work for us. Hey, Doug, you're going to be the cinematographer on this. Julia Smith, she had acted as Toothy in Filling In, which was her first filming experience. She loved that so much. She actually changed her career in her life to be a producer. She produces for a living now, as opposed to the marriage and psychologist. She's a smart doctor lady. She produced Unpossessors, and we had a couple of newbies on that, and some new challenges as well, where we were like, we're going to have an all-female cast. We have a female producer, an all-female cast. I directed that one, so I'm not a female, but some great behind-the-scenes learning experience on Unpossessors was, in a sense, it was our first failure as a group. It was a Milwaukee 48, and we had brought on a new editor to try his hand at it. We had brought in a new composer to try his hand at things, and it all turned out great. I think Unpossessors, for as rough as it might seem, is a great short film. But when we went to hand it in, like exporting the movie in line, at the seconds ticking by, like we handed it in with the red zone, like got that in. The audio didn't transfer on the final clip, and we handed in a silent movie.
Oh.
And it crushed us because we were in such a deep panic getting to the finish line, and then boom, we failed. And it was a growing experience for all of us. And on the other side of things, the team had willingly split in half. All of our creative, our writers, our actors had done Unpossessors. The other half of our team, that was the tech side of things, John Klein, Chris Mayer, our producer, Chad, our editor, they had a second team and attempted to road trip to St. Louis and do the 48 on the road back to Milwaukee. And they had a terrible experience as well. And so one of the lessons we learned as a group was we are stronger together, and we should not break apart like that ever again. Everything we failed at on Unpossessors would have been solved by the crew that was doing the other movie, and everything that they failed at on their team would have been solved by us. So it was like, guys, what were we thinking? It was a great experience. It was such a great experience.
Awesome. Going on to where you co-directed a few short films. Take the Night, I'll Raise You, and Hi Neighbor.
Okay. So I want to tick through those real quick. So Take the Night was just a spec ad for it was a New Amsterdam Vodka did a challenge. Hey, try to come up with a short film, Take the Night. And if you succeed, you will be our official commercial. So we we took a stab at that. It turned out fine. I think it's a fine little thing. What was the other one? I'll Raise You. Is that what you said?
Yep.
Yeah,
Which
I'll
was
Raise.
one of your first efforts that you kind of edited behind too.
Yes, that is true. I'll Raise You came from that feels more like that sort of YouTubey, just sketch comedy, short little, not a high production value on that one. That was just Chad, Schulze, Candace, and myself just sitting around like, hey, let's film something. Hey, what do you guys say? Come on, just bust out a camera. What's something we can come up with? Okay, let's just shoot this out. And that one's a lot of fun. I like drawn out torture comedy, and that's definitely one of those things where like the joke just keeps going. But Hi Neighbor, that is one of our most successful films. That is still getting into film festivals to this day. All these years, it's only been a few years, but I think 2013 or 14.
I saw it at the Milwaukee Short Film Festival before Twisted Dreams Festival came around.
Yes, yeah. Oh
And,
man,
it was like it was funny because I was one of the I kind of I was hanging out with Milwaukee Movie Talk at the time, and we went to the short film festival. We saw it there, and then they had asked you. I think they had asked you to have it in their festival, and I was one of the guys who the feature film that won that year. I was
excellent.
One of the people who was helping out, not producing. I forget when you're sponsoring a sponsor.
Oh, okay, I got you. Yeah.
So, but I saw it while I was watching the Wisconsin short blocks, and I loved it. So.
Yeah, Hi Neighbor is fun, and this is another one of those growing experiences with Hi Neighbor. At this point, many of us, as we were developing as filmmakers, we were still trying to find our voice. I felt, from a writing perspective, just looking at the movies we've talked about up to this point, I think we have a voice in there. I think myself as a writer or co-writer, I think my voice is clear, or it's getting clearer in the mix. But as a director, we hadn't achieved a vision yet. So like you couldn't point at it and say, this wasn't just blocking, this wasn't just directing the actors, this was directing the look of a film and the cinematography of the film. And Hi Neighbor was the first movie, and I co-directed that with Chris Scholes, where we were like, let's get really specific on the shots we want. Let's get really specific on the transitions and the movements. And it was a great challenge for John Klein, our cinematographer, because he had to, and a very willing participant in everything we've done. Now it was like, no, I'm making a directing call. I want this camera to shift like this because we're going to put the transition in here. And him having a little resistance to, I don't think that's going to work. And I was like, well, that's what I want, so let's do that. And it was no argument. It wasn't like, I don't want to do this. It was a great challenging discussion of like, is this really what you want? Yes. How are we going to achieve that? And Schulze and I we have a love for Edgar Wright, so we were trying to tap into some of those Edgar Wright-isms. So there's some great, it's specifically where Candace, who plays Erin in the film, the distraught housewife, there's where she's sitting on the couch, and then there's like a light switch change, and the light, boom, it's like it's a match cut, and that was a very Edgar Wright thing that we were attempting and totally nailed it, courtesy of our gaffer, Tim Motor, and John Klein, our cinematographer, and our editor, Chad, Max, and actually I helped edit on that a little bit too.
Cool.
But Hi Neighbor, I love that one too.
Ultimately, after Hi Neighbor, you did a short film called Thin Pipes.
Thin Pipes, yes.
How did you get involved with that one?
So Thin Pipes, that was filmed out in Los Angeles, and so Candace at this point, and this is something she'd always desired. She wanted to challenge herself as an actress. She was always looking for opportunities to try new characters, to expand her range. And Erica, who plays opposite Candace in the film, I had a friend of ours, Chris Reimer, who I'd worked on with some, who's in it. He plays the sexy plumber. Chris had introduced me to Erica because she had just moved to Los Angeles, and he said, "Oh, this is Erica. This is TC. TC, this is Erica. If you want to make something, talk to him." And she didn't have anything for a reel, anything for her acting reel, and
Okay.
so the reason he introduced us was he was hoping that I could potentially produce and come up with something that she could eventually use to get her acting reel going. So
Okay.
with Candace wanting to try something, always wanting to try new acting challenges, and Erica looking for something that she could have on a reel, Thin Pipes kind of was birthed from that. And
Okay.
I grew up loving situational comedies. Even looking at the inspiration of that would be a very Lucy and Ethel kind of situational comedy, going to I Love Lucy style.
Okay.
And very cartoonish characterizations in terms of me playing some hippy dippy dude with a terrible California accent. And yeah, and that one was fun because it was 17 pages and we filmed the whole thing in a day.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah.
And then ultimately after that project, you went on to do a short film called Heist, which I believe
Yes.
Was it part of a TV series, or was it going to be
Yeah.
part of a TV series?
Alex Frew, Graham Alexander, and forget. No, not Jesse. I'm forgetting who their third partner is. They have a YouTube channel called Derp Circus, where
Okay.
they do short films or like little sketch comedy, very digestible. I check out their Christmas episode. It's so funny. They have some really, really hilarious stuff. Alex, how did I come across? Oh, I met Alex doing some production work out here, and
Okay.
we connected really well. He's like, "Hey, I want to do this heist film. Would you come be involved?" I ended up being cinematographer / director on that, and it was a great challenge in terms of like, okay, I want to impress this guy. I'm going to come in and I'm going to treat this as seriously as I've treated all the 48s, and where these guys would normally set up their tripod and goof off, I came in with a shot list. I came in with Candace had lent me all of her filming equipment, so I was able to utilize all that, and I took it very seriously. And they were like, "Whoa, the production value on this is way higher than we had done previously." And that was we shot on a roof. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I love those guys; they're hilarious.
Cool.
Dan
And after
Caesar. Dan Caesar's the third man in that group. Sorry.
gotcha. After that, you got involved with a short film called Escatan.
Ah, yes.
How did you get involved with that?
So Escatan is another one of those challenging myself as a filmmaker. Xerxes Senko, who I'd worked previously on Relish with, and another production that I helped complete a Halo fan film called The Fallen, which I don't know if we're going to talk about that. But with Escatan,
why don't you talk about that after this one, and then we'll go back.
Certainly. So Escatan was, so here the challenges I set for myself was very, very deliberate camera work, positionings, focal lengths, lenses. And Xerxes loved that because we sat down and broke down every detail of the script to know who was winning the conversation between the two characters, and where that meant for position of the camera. And from an acting challenge, that was another challenge for myself and for Candace, who are the only two performers in it, to do this very mysterious, dramatic turn for us, and to make very clear acting choices. The choice I made with the character I'm playing, this very intense character, I don't blink once in the entire film, and Candace challenging herself to have this very aggressive, restrained aggression through the course of it that was a lot of fun. It's a very simple story at first glance, but for us, it was this very, very nuanced challenge for us to tell a very complex story with complex visuals as simply as possible, if that makes any sense at all.
Cool. And then ultimately, after that film, you went on to do Violet,
Mm-hmm.
which how did you get involved with that?
So it's always constantly wanting to challenge ourselves. Violet came that summer. I believe we did 348s,
Okay.
and that 48 was for Charlotte, North Carolina. The Wisconsin crew filmed in Los Angeles. So I said, "Hey guys, I know we're doing the Madison, but a week later or a week before is Charlotte. What do you guys say about driving out here to join me? We do the 48 from here and send it to my sister in Charlotte." And I know it's a crazy idea. You guys are probably going to laugh in my face thinking that, how could we possibly do such a thing? Chad, Chris, Corey, totally on board, hopped in the car, drove to California, and we knocked that thing out. Violet was a lot of fun, and we threw Charlotte for a loop because it had been done before. The 48, it is totally, you can do it. It's not against the rules to participate in a different city from a different city. In fact, on the example they use on the 48 site is a New Jersey team won a Peru 48 one year. As long as you have one representative in the city to hand in the movie, it's perfectly legal.
Okay.
So we threw Charlotte for a loop for that because here comes this LA team, which is really a Wisconsin team shooting in LA. It surprised people because particularly that weekend of the 48 in Charlotte, the cicadas were attacking outside. So it was just anyone had outdoor footage. It was just the sound of cicadas. And here comes an LA team with perfect quote unquote sound, with vistas looking out at the mountains. They changed the rules a couple of years later about how filming from out of state works. But Violet was a lot of fun. Got to film
you get away with that.
Yeah. We weren't trying to be a-holes about it. We definitely did it as a fun challenge, and we had a blast with it. Got to film a fight scene, which we won an award for. Candace and Scotch got to kick the crap out of each other. It definitely has a wonderful sense of humor to it. Alex plays he's from Derp Circus. He plays the main character in that played such a poor guy opposite of Candace as the badass.
And ultimately, after Violet, you went into a project called This One Last Time. How did you get involved with that?
Yeah. So This One Last Time was the week later for the Madison 48, I believe. And that was another Julia Smith produced production. Chris Scholl's actually co-produced with her. And it was a more or less a new team because we had decided we're exhausted. We're not going to do the Madison 48 this year. Firmament at the time, and this is near the end of Firmament's run, using that example of wanting to push ourselves to a higher level in our career. We're not going to do the 48. But Julia was like, "Well, I'm doing it." So I'm putting a team together. And so then it was like, okay, well, maybe I'll do it. I mean, if you want me to come write, I'll do it. And I directed that one as well. And that one was a lot of fun because we were pushing to do drama. Julia was really looking to say something with our story. And Josh Halverson, no relation to Chad, our DP on that, our cinematographer, he filmed that so beautifully. We did not do any color correction. He did everything in camera on that. And that was a great experience to see such a an experienced veteran cinematographer who knows his camera, who understands lighting, who knows his location, um, and to film it so beautifully. And a great challenge for our especially David Geisler as our actor to tap into a really emotional performance in such a short amount of time. That's a heavier piece. There's no humor in that one, and David knocks it out of the park in terms of the weight of that broken individual, that alcoholic.
Okay. And ultimately, you went into fan film territory with
Yeah.
the fall. Uh, I figured I'd ask you about it because I've actually produced a couple of and actually am producing a fan film of my own. So figured I'd. How was that?
Fan films are an interesting animal. What's your fan film about, or do you not want to say?
I can say about it. I'm actually one of the producers behind a web series that'll be coming out
Mhm.
on uh, which I think is being put on hold for another uh, a film, which I think will follow this film with Harley Quinn. So
Excellent. Very
I'm
cool.
a young director from North Carolina, and he wants to get a feature film out on YouTube. So,
Yeah,
uh,
that's great.
but I also, but I also have executively produced a Friday the 13th
Oh,
fan film.
very cool. I'd love to see that. You should send me that link.
Um, don't think it has a link right now, but I think it will eventually come out on Catch Me If You Kill Me Productions.
Okay, cool. Send it away. I'd love to see it. Fan films are such an interesting thing because on one hand, you're not working with your own property. So what's the point? Why waste all that effort making something that's not yours, that you can't make money off of it? It's a fan film. Why waste your time? Which I certainly heard from the wings of some of my production friends. But on the other side of things, there's the element of, if you do a fan film, it's an established property that people are going to look at and potentially be interested in your other stuff. It's a great entry into it's I mean, look at it from a Hollywood perspective. Who wants to see an original film? I want to see a sequel. I want to see a remake, and that's unfortunate, but that's just a matter of fact.
Mhm.
But the third aspect of fan films is you're making them because you're a fan of the material. You just love the universe so much that you want to play in it. And
Mhm.
The Fallen, the Halo fan film that I was involved in, Xerxes produced it and was director cinematographer on it. Danielle, I'm going to say her last name wrong. I apologize. Danielle Young, Yao, Yuan. There we go. She wrote and produced it. And the great thing about the Halo of Fallen is that it was made by military people, that there were Marines and Air Force and Army, and I'm missing one, Navy, involved in the production of it. And it was a 3 year in the making. I was brought on just to act. And as the production was kind of chugging along and tripping constantly, Xerxes and Danielle were very welcome to letting me rewrite a couple scenes. I rewrote the ending. Like, they were just gonna, like, oh, we'll just cut to a card. We don't want to film. I'm like, no, no. One day of filming. I wrote this. Let's do this ending. I wrote it, um, and pushed them to that point. And then it sat on a shelf for a year, not being edited because they lost all the love for it. And I said, okay, give it to me. I will edit it. I will put this together. And because everyone worked so hard on it, I would have been so crushed if it just never saw the light of day. So they willingly just gave it over to me to get it across the finish line.
Well, and
And
the thing that I've heard is that even though a director can direct a film, the editor is actually the true director, the uncredited director
mhm.
behind the film. So when it went into your hands, you ultimately became somewhat of a more of a director
Yeah,
behind.
yeah, that's very true. The story of films are made three times: when you write it, when you film it, and when you edit it. And that's very true of The Fallen, because there was no climax to the movie. They had filmed everything up to the climax and then the epilogue, and there was no climax. And I'm sitting there with all the materials going, well, there's no the reason this can't be finished is there's no ending. There's nothing happens. So I was able to wrangle in Chris Reimer, who plays Garrison, the main character, Selena, who played one of the other main characters. I was able to convince them to come out for one more day, filming in the hot desert with a new crew, with a bunch of new characters I had written in, and we shot the battle scene. And it was so much fun. As soon as I was like, it was so much fun to direct that scene and film that scene. That the actors are in a trench, and I'm throwing dirt in their faces to get them to react to bombs going off. And that was there's a great behind the scenes that Candace Osler filmed for me for that moment where they're all running their lines, all the actors. There was like 7 actors in that trench, and we were yelling. We're yelling in a trench, but they weren't yelling in a trench. They were stage yelling. And I was like, all right, guys, this is a war zone. You need to be freaking the hell out. You need to be, so let's run the scene again, and I'm going to provide all the sound effects. So the scene starts, and I just start screaming, boom, explosion, and so they had to, laughing, shout all their lines over me, and it worked. It was so amazing because they brought it into the scene because they knew, okay, that's how loud it has to be, because that was such a blast. And I was so happy to. It's not the best. Like, there's certainly mistakes. Read the comments section. Everyone's mad I used a battle rifle sound effect when I should have used a DMR sound effect. And but it got done. And that's way more important to me than if we had waited another 5 years to perfect it.
Awesome. And ultimately, after The Fallen, you went and did a production called Stories for the Fire. How did you get involved with that?
This is another great example, like I'll Raise Ya, where it was a group of us sitting around going, let's film something. And on New Year's Eve, it was Candace, Alex, Renee, and I at our place, ringing in the new year. And I think it might have been Candace would probably like, hey, why don't we film something tomorrow? And I was like, okay, what should we film? And we conceptualized this idea of telling stories around a fire and visualizing them and seeing them. And so I wrote it that night. The next morning, we fine-tuned it. Candace, Alex, and Renee started memorizing. And then that night, we set a fire in the fire pit in the backyard and started filming. And we knocked it out in a day.
Awesome. Now, ultimately, after Stakeout Stories, you went, or wait, not Stories for the Fire. You did a series of short films, one dealing with a TV series called 1 Minute Gamer.
Oh, that was Chad Halverson had a YouTube series where he reviewed games for a minute, so he did that, and
Gotcha.
And 1 Minute Rewatch was my spin-off series of that where I reviewed movies.
Okay, and then Interviewing 101 and screenwriter.
Yes. Oh boy. I side note, I don't know if you expected this interview to go this long, so I apologize for talking so much.
I totally expected it to go long because you had a lot of short films.
Yeah. So Interview 101, that again, another one of my favorites. There was 3 of us who made that, with Jeff as our silent fourth, who did the wonderful credit sequence on that. Chad was attempting, he's a wonderful producer, he's a fantastic editor, and he had applied for a position at a company as a producer at a company in Madison. And he had an interview he landed the interview. He's like, okay, I have an interview. I want to come in with something that I've produced since finding out I have the interview. What can we do? And that's where Interview 101 came from. We shot that whole thing in a day. It's another one of those, like, all that 48-hour experience makes it very fun for us to challenge ourselves to do something fast and do it great. And we came up with, he walked into that interview and said, thank you for seeing me for this interview. Since you told me, I produced this. Hire me. I'm a great producer. They missed out because they didn't hire him. Those dum-dums. I don't know what they were thinking. He walked in and proved he could produce a short film in a day that looked that good. Ah, fools. He's too good for them. Chad's too good for them.
And now, had you worked with anyone new in any of these productions we've talked so far?
Well, certainly with Halo of the Fallen, there was a slew of people that I'd never worked with before that I have gone on and worked with since. Violet was well, I'd worked with Alex, but getting him on one of our full productions was a new experience. Erica, who's also in Violet, was someone who's in Thin Pipes. You know what? I keep just working with the same people over and over again. With Screenwriter, which is the other one you brought up, which is the one that Chad successfully he fully produced that himself. He had co-producers, but that was his ship to run. He was the captain of that. I guess it's a fleet. So he was the commodore of that fleet of ships that created Screenwriter, and he took us all the way to Cannes Film Festival with that short. That was a Milwaukee 48 that we won with. We got to Filmapalooza with that. Screenwriter was certainly, we kind of played with the genre of fable. The lesson learned is be careful what you wish for. But we certainly we were showing how much experience we'd had as professional filmmakers, because that film certainly mocks the process of professional filmmaking. I won't lie, Michael J. Beheimer is based on a couple of experiences that I've had working professionally as a writer.
Totally understand. Now that's the film that you were talking about earlier that made it all the way to that con you were talking about.
Yes, yeah. The Cannes.
Ultimately, at that con, did it win anything there? How was its reception?
Reception was fantastic. It was very well received. There was only 12 short films that were played on the big screen at this one of the most prestigious, in some people's eyes, the most prestigious film festival annually in the world. It was an incredible experience, very humbling to be among the company we were with, to see that red carpet, to know that careers come to this festival, and here we are, this piddly little Midwestern short film mocking the industry. It was an awakening for us to look at how far we'd come just to get there, and this amazing opportunity to get there, and how much further we still have to go to walk amongst those prestigious films, and to be even considered amongst them. We felt like the Beverly Hillbillies.
I can definitely see that. So
we didn't win anything at cons, which is perfectly fine. Like, we weren't going there to thinking we were, but Screenwriter has gone on to be a very successful film for us.
Cool. Ultimately, you got into 4 more short films called Unbuttoned, Like the First Time, Holiday 101, and Stakeout Stories.
Okay, so Holiday 101 was a follow-up to Interview 101. It was just another opportunity of like, hey, we're all together, let's do a sequel, which I was totally against, because I don't believe comedies should have sequels. But Candace and Chad convinced me to do it, and I'm happy with how it turned out. And a little behind the scenes, we have a third one that's going to come out eventually.
Cool.
Like the First Time was another example of out here in California, Renee and Alex and Xerxes. Xerxes he's like, I want to film something. Can you please come up? I'm sick of making wedding videos. Can you come up with something we can go out and film? And that's where Like the First Time came from, which was a darker turn for us. No comedy in that one. I had a lot of fun visualizing the differences with the first half of that film and the second half of that film. A great acting challenge for Renee and Alex is terrifying in that short. I really am proud of his work in that. And then Like the First Time, Holiday 101, Unbuttoned was another 48. That was the same week, the same month that we did screenwriter in, I believe.
Okay.
And that was another Charlotte 48 where we shot it in Wisconsin. We shot it in my hometown of Kenosha. Chad and I are from Kenosha. We filmed it there. And that one, if you've watched it, it's all about, it looks like it's two films. And it doesn't work as effectively watching it on YouTube. But in a film festival where the card comes up, you watch the film, the next movie's card comes up, you watch the film. I sat there in that audience sweating bullets, wondering if we'd pull it off, if people would be tricked into thinking they were seeing a second short film. And it worked. And the audience just just laughed their asses off at that punchline that I was I was like, oh, thank God, it worked. It was such a relief. Let's see, what was the fourth film you mentioned?
Stakeout Stories.
Stakeout Stories. So Stakeout Stories was a Milwaukee 48. So that was last year or 2 years ago. But otherwise, whatever the case may be, that is a oneer, which is a one continuous unbroken shot that we had considered doing many times before, but never had the guts to try to pull it off for a 48. And
Okay.
when we were conceptualizing stories, myself, Chad as the producer, and Tim Motor, who was our DP on that, when we were pitching stories, we were coming out, well, okay, we like this, and then we thought we would settle on an idea, and I was like, okay, I have one more pitch, guys. And I was like, oh gosh, a bolt of lightning has just struck me. I have an idea. I'm going to pitch it. So I pitched, it's two cops on a stakeout, sitting in a car. All this wacky stuff is happening behind them. And Tim and Chad are nodding, like, okay, this is good. And I was like, but one last thing. It's a oneer. And Chad just dropped his head and was like, oh God. And Tim was like, yes. And then Chad looks up and goes, we're doing this. We're doing it, aren't we? And it was such a phenomenal technical challenge. And to go back to that, you wondering from production standpoints.
Probably a good reaction from the team going like, are we really ready for this?
Yeah. Oh, the crew was so on board, and that goes back to having the experienced crew and the willingness of the crew and the enthusiasm of the crew. What we ended up filming. The one disappointment I have is that nobody filmed us behind the scenes and how we did it, because we had a dolly track and a giant jib, and we had people waiting in the wing. Like, all the orchestration of pulling that off was just ridiculous. And the fact that nobody thought to film it behind the scenes, and it's because we didn't have Candace there. She was out in California at the time. If she had been there, we would have that memory it's in my head. I remember how insane it looked behind the camera, because it was like silently going, you go, okay, now you go, no, wait, okay, now you go. And like, we did 11 takes of that, and we had to be done at 11 p.m. We could not stay at that location. The alarms were going to go off if we were still there. And to contain it within the 7 minutes, I didn't know if we got it. Like, we had to wrap, and I'm sitting there like rubbing my face like, I don't know if we got it. Was this a bad idea? And we hit the 7 minute time frame, one frame from going over, one single solitary frame from going over the time limit. Once Chad dropped it in, I was like, yes. Died.
Awesome. Now, ultimately, you got involved in a project called Tripped.
Yes, Tripped.
How did you get involved with that?
So Tripped, once again, another 48. This is the Chicago 48, and this was another fine challenge for us. We hit a lot of snags in the production of this one, and it was definitely a learning and growing experience, because this goes, I keep talking about having a willing crew and an excited crew and an experienced crew. And we are certainly an experienced crew. Going into this, we had a couple of new people, and like a new gaffer, a new camera operator, some new faces on screen. But we had the experienced production behind us. We had Chad leading the ship. But it's that willingness that I think affected us overall, that we didn't come into the weekend excited to do it. that there was a little bit of, okay, we're doing another one of these, and that was the wrong attitude. And I think that though I think Trip turned out great, I think there's some fun to be had in it. I don't feel it's a strong piece for us because I can see the unwillingness or the lack of enthusiasm that we had brought previously to so many productions. And Tripped was kind of an awakening to us of like, we're now doing this professionally. We do this, we make films, I write, we direct, act, we were all doing this as our careers now. And now it felt almost like an obligation to try to do a 48. And that was the wrong attitude. We made a mistake in that respect. And I'm willing to admit that it may still have turned out and people still enjoy it, but I can only see the fallacies in it.
Okay. And then ultimately, in the last year, you directed two more short films called Positive and Hot Dog. And how did you get involved with those projects?
So those are both another. Hot Dog actually is great because that's the one we just released. This is a fun one. I was at Candace's place. I was gonna go jump in the pool. She offered to make me food. I was like, well, she's like, go swim. I'm like, well, what about my food? We had the whole conversation as it is on screen practically. And Candace was like, that was funny. We should film that. And I said, yeah, let's film it. And so she made some little tweaks to how we should do it, even coming up with the punchline at the end. and we filmed it just it's very sketch comedy, YouTube-y style, shot it. And we edited it and released it the next day. We put it up online, just said, hey, here's a little thing we filmed yesterday. And one of our friends, Renee, who'd been in Violet and worked on a couple other films with us, she said, happy National Hot Dog Day. And lo and behold, it was National Hot Dog Day. Somehow, just by the alignment of stars, we shot a short film about a hot dog and released it on National Hot Dog Day, completely unbeknownst to us. I was like flipping out because I thought it was just the most incredible. Candace obviously was very surprised as well, but I'm like, no way, no way. And Positive was another YouTube-y sketch comedy kind of let's have some fun and make something that I shot with Daniel Robbins, who's the other actor in it. And I had directed a pilot for a TV series, a half-hour comedy, just a few months earlier. And we had such a great time working together that he was like, hey, let's get together and just shoot some stuff. And that's where Positive came out of that. The pilot I shot for him hasn't been released yet, but keep an eye out because we may be releasing parts of it very soon.
Cool. And I'm just going to ask you about two acting acting roles that you have played. One being, you were in Star Trek?
Yes. What's the other one, if I may ask?
Tu Lava, Tu Lantula.
Okay, let me talk about that one real quick. Renee works for, she's involved with LA Cops, which rents out all the police cruisers and SWAT equipment in Los Angeles.
Okay.
Like, they're one of the biggest rental companies for Hollywood productions. And because she's involved with that, anytime a production rents those equipment, hey, you want to be an extra? You want to be something small here? Okay. And whenever she has an opportunity like that, she'll just call up some of her friends and say, hey, you want to come be in this thing? So yeah, I got to be on an extra in Steve Gutenberg's Tu Lava, Tu Lantula. So that was just a fun little thing. But you mentioned Star Trek. So when I moved to California in end of 2007, I came out here to learn. I came out here to get myself on a real Hollywood set, to just absorb and learn whatever I could about legitimate filmmaking. Before that, I had filmed stuff with my friends on camera. I even helped a friend film a feature using a camcorder. Like I'd watched all the behind the scenes on Lord of the Rings. I know how major motion pictures are made. And I came out here and learned about background acting, about being an extra. and Star Trek did an open casting call for extras, the background people that would be in the movie.
Okay.
And they only picked 100 people. That line to get through that audition was 3 miles long. It was all over the news. And I was lucky enough to have been selected as one of the 100 people that got to be in that.
Okay.
And so my first few months out in California, I managed to land an extra role on a major motion picture, which at the time I thought was incredible. But to be honest, if you come out here, it's not that difficult. You can sign up.
Now, can you actually say that you actually got some screen time?
I did, yes, yeah. I'm particularly the back of my head fills up the entire screen at one point. When Kirk is getting reprimanded, the camera pans behind somebody, and the whole big fat melon goes across the head, across the screen. That's me. That's TC's big head.
Awesome.
But that was an amazing experience, and I've mentioned through the course of this interview, doing 48s as a great experience in learning where you are as a filmmaker.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely recommend get on a set, be an extra, watch how a major motion picture is made, because I had no clue what I was doing. Everything I thought I knew, I was wrong. I got on that set, I watched a big budget film being made, and it was just incredible. Like, oh my gosh, the director doesn't even touch the camera. That's the director of photography's job. And oh, the assistant director is the one who calls action. I never knew that. I thought the director did that. Like all these wonderful learning experiences, and I kept doing extra work. I've been an extra, and my list is like 75 things long. So I got to be on TV shows, and I didn't go on to any of those things thinking, this is it. This is how I become a star. I went into every one of those things going, okay, what can I learn today? Hey, you're sitting around with other extras. Hey, what's your best experience? Tell me your favorite extra story. And meeting people and learning the system was so exciting. And I so recommend it to anyone who wants to try to break into filmmaking, and especially if you're going to take the chance of moving out into LA, into Hollywood, sign up to be an extra. You're paid to be there. It's free meals. You get, if it's long enough, you get 3 full meals a day, and you get $100 at the end of the day. It's like there's no disadvantage to being an extra.
At this point in time, I'm going to ask you: is there anything else? Is there anything in the future that you're working on that you'd like to talk about before that you're working on? And then I'm going to ask you where you can find your media and whatnot. You can plug yourself, and then we'll end the show.
Well, currently we are in post-production on The Princess Knights, which is our first feature film, like fully produced. I wrote it. It's actually the stage show that I was in the middle of production of when we did Filling In. It was originally a stage musical with actors, and that I produced out of Burlington, about a 2.5-hour show. And now we've adapted it into a feature film with Muppets, with actual full-fledged puppets, not sock puppets, but like very Sesame Street, Kermit the Frog, Sweetums looking puppets. And we've been in post-production for over a year now. It's a very visually effects heavy film, and it's another great learning and growing experience. But we are aiming right now, and because I'm saying this publicly, it's making it even more of a challenge to make it happen. We are looking at a Christmas release this year for that. And so that is the big thing that our team is pushing towards.
Is this a short film or a feature?
This is a feature-length film. It's going to be just under 2 hours. Right now it's clocking in at 1:45. It is a full feature film. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I know. I remember putting in on a couple of puppet features back when I was crowdfunding. So I know I didn't catch yours, but I know I caught another one.
I appreciate the desire, at least. Yeah, it's funny. People have asked, like, would you ever work with puppets again? Yeah, absolutely. I know, like, the Trey Park and Matt Stone after Team America were like, never again. However, I will say, had any of us known just how difficult it was going to be to work with puppets, I don't think we would have done it. I'm glad we did it. and there's so much magic that has come out of it. But we've grown so much as filmmakers in the 5 years it's taken to make this movie.
Very cool. Definitely something I can look forward to. And other people can look forward to because it keeps puppet magic alive. I mean, I remember watching, Fraggle Rock and
Mm-hmm.
Muppet Show and all those, and those were groundbreaking television shows for Muppets in general. So
Yeah, we set that bar at trying to be the Muppets. We did not achieve it. I'm going to be honest. We don't have the millions of dollars they have, but there's so much fun to be had with the Princess Night as a feature with these puppets. I'm so looking forward to sharing it with everybody. It's just where with Hail of the Fallen, it was a matter of like, no, this needs to get done. We're getting it done no matter what. With Princess Night, it's we need to get it done, but we need to get it done right. We're not going to rush this. We're not going to just push it out. People have put too much effort into it to just say, good enough.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
most definitely. Now, where can we find your contact stuff? We can find you on Facebook, correct?
Sure. So you can actually, I want to plug all of us at first. So you can find Redacted Media on Facebook.com/Redacted Media LLC. That's where all of our short films go up. We put out, we have a couple podcasts that we do regularly. If you want to if you enjoyed listening to me for the past hour, you can listen to me talk for more hours. And so Redacted Media LLC on Facebook, you can find us there. You can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/Redacted Media. And you can also find us on Twitter at Redact Yourself and Instagram at Redact, which Candace just made for us. What is it? Redacted Media. You can find us on Instagram. Me personally, if you'd like to track me down, because I do much more beyond the Redacted Media library. You can find me on Twitter and on Instagram at TC's Big Head. And you can always find me on Facebook. And I, obviously, as I've just proven, I'm happy to chat for as long as anyone wants to.
Well, I appreciate you being able to come on and talk extensively about your career like you have.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I don't often get to
listening to how, what goes on behind, the scenes of, what goes on. And I'm sure not a lot of people have gone through your film career like I have.
Yeah, well, I don't even know if I've ever sat down and gone in such detail. So I appreciate the opportunity. I definitely don't. I won't let it go to my head that we just did this.
Yeah, most definitely. So I appreciate you being able to come on and be on and talk with me. I definitely enjoyed listening to you. I enjoy learning more about the filmmaking process, being a producer and being someone who is more of a watcher of films. I definitely enjoyed this conversation, and hopefully this will be helpful to you because I actually do have a somewhat of a following. So
cool. Thank you.
And hopefully maybe you can come back and talk to me about the reception of Princess
Night. I would love to come back in the future and talk again with you, even if it's just to just hang out and chat.
Cool. Alrighty. Well, that's all the time we have for today, folks. So definitely check out this interview and check out some of his work online. You can find us on Facebook here on YouTube, and you can definitely listen to this whenever you want. So, in any case, have a good afternoon, folks. I definitely have some more cool reviews for you coming up. So, and who knows who I'll be interviewing next. In any case, have a good afternoon, folks, and like, subscribe, and listen.